Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So this week's episode was a very interesting episode where this case dealt with a dude named Travis. So basically Travis worked for, I forgot what the proper title for their job is. Basically, when someone who doesn't have any heirs dies, basically they investigate to determine whether this person has heirs that they might not have known about, people who are entitled to whatever this said person that died left behind. Basically Travis basically pocketed a lot of stuff, and so he's kind of like a thief is kind of what we ended up finding out. And, well, basically we find out when a storage unit gets bought at the beginning of the episode, Travis's body is found in it. And basically, going back through everything, they end up finding out that basically there was a captain's log that was stolen from this guy who had died. His name was, I forgot what his first name was, but his name was Barker. And then it turns out that he has like an ancestor named, I don't remember what the name is, but nevertheless, it's not important. It turns out that this particular ancestor of his was actually moonlighting as a pirate. Basically, he had like a legit business during the day where it's like, oh, we'll ship stuff, blah, 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 take my own stuff across the sea. And then that, like, later on, him and his crew switch over to pirate mode and basically ransack and steal from people on the sea. So basically, at first it seems like all this is connected to like this logbook, maybe at least all his treasure. But then it's like, no, a lot of his treasure he most likely invested into, some kind of particular thing he invested it in, and most of it was mostly lost. But they're also saying that maybe his book will also lead to this sunken treasure ship, a ship that had sunk around that same time with like a crap ton of gold on it. So basically the story takes many different twists and turns, some very interesting twists and turns, because basically it involves a billionaire who got involved, basically this dude named Lars who runs a expedition. Basically he had a whole dealings. Basically, he's got investors. Hey, we find some treasures. Like, they get a split of it. It's just part of the whole business. And his billionaire ended up finding it before him because the billionaire got the logbook that originally belonged to Black Peter. But it's like, how did you get that? Travis is the one who had it. It was all done on the dark web, so he didn't really know who it was. Basically, it was someone basically offering to give him the journal for like, what was it, like 25,000 or something like that, and basically he kind of reaps in all the profits. So the fact is that he found this like ship full of gold and stuff like that, made like a crap ton of money. Very interesting twist was we ended up finding out that basically the person behind the dealings on the black market is this little girl. Like, I mean, I say little girl, but she's probably like, because she's like, the whole point is she's saving up money for college. So she's probably like high school, roughly college age, because originally her dad's a criminal, but he's not selling drugs anymore, so the income's kind of slim. So she had to find. I mean, for her, she's like, well, I'm not really doing anything illegal. It's not like I'm selling drugs or anything on the black market. And for her, it's not even like she acquires certain things. She just acts as a middleman. It's like, oh, this person's trying to sell this thing. Well, I introduced them to someone. I'll put this out there, be like, oh, this person's trying to blah, 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 blah. So she ended up giving him the book, and apparently she was able to keep all the profit for it. But to me, what really gets crazy is the explanation of why this is all done. Basically, you end up finding out Lars, the dude who has that expedition company, is the killer. Basically, the whole, and like it's a heavy level Ponzi scheme. I'm not familiar with the movie that they were referencing in the episode that had Gene Wilder in it. I'm not familiar with that movie, but basically they're like, oh, basically it's selling. It's almost like, not necessarily, I guess it'd be compared to a Ponzi scheme. I don't know. Basically, he was going to basically have his investors invest in the expedition. That basically setting up all these contracts saying like, oh, he'll give them 1,000% of the treasure that's found, because basically he needs people, to get down there. Takes like a crap ton of money. He needs people to do it, but he already knows like, oh, there's every record that's ever said anything about this ship has said that there's no treasure on it. So I'll feed them a story, but like, oh, there's gold up there, and they'll think they're reaching for it. And then when it's all said and done, when they pay for all the stuff and all the money that he gets that's needed to pay for the expedition, they were saying that at the very least he was going to make like a $14 million profit from this. But then things got complicated because Travis shows up with the book, the log, and it's like, oh yeah, there's actually treasure down there. So And that's what this is all about, why he killed Travis. Because if it came out that there was treasure out down there and his men ended up finding, well, the investors ended up finding out about it, then it would turn out to be like, oh, whereas like he would have made a profit, he would have owed them like a crap ton of money. Because the comparison Joan used was like, if you were to find like 1 million down there, you would have to owe them like 100 million because of the whole contract and everything. So just like I said, it was a very, like, not necessarily convoluted, but it was very complicated. Like I said, like, I don't know, like a lot of twists and turns and just the whole understanding behind it. Like, I mean, I think that takes some kind of evil genius to come up with some stuff like that. To think such a, I don't know, I just think that's, like I said, that's why it kind of reminds me of a Ponzi scheme. It's kind of funny, I'm using the term Ponzi scheme when I really don't, I have an idea what it means to Ponzi scheme. I mean, really, I think the proper term would be more like embezzlement, essentially. So I think embezzling would be kind of the same thing. But a Ponzi scheme, a Ponzi scheme is embezzling, isn't it? Nevertheless, I'm just going to confuse myself. The point is, the killer was found. And I just thought that was kind of interesting, all these different layers to it like that. So I did appreciate the fact it's like, I was like, oh, I thought we were going to really dive into modern pirates, because basically Lars, he was with his investors and stuff like that. They kind of got attacked on a few occasions. It turns out that basically this professor who's kind of connected to kind of that world, not necessarily expedition, but, you know, she's kind of like basically people like Lars and his expeditions gotta cause a lot of harm doing what they're doing. So basically she got her students to kind of rally up and basically attack him. Basically, it isn't to attack him, but destroy his ship, kind of slow him down so that he's not able to do what he needs to do, essentially. So, but I was wondering, I was like, oh, we're going to deal with like modern pirates, which I'm, you know, depending on where you go out there in the world. I mean, pirates still exist. I mean, people you would classify as pirates. They're not probably like as like eye patchy and as peg-legged and with a parrot on their shoulder like that, but still pirates nonetheless. So. But that was like the main case of the episode. The other side of the episode is dealing with the information that we learned last episode from Sherlock when he was talking to Jamel's brother about, oh, Shinwell being behind it. And he tells this to Joan, which we have a very huge divide throughout the episode. It's because, like, Joan doesn't want to believe it, but Sherlock's like, no, the fact is Jamel's brother was very convincing. I know he's not lying. But Joan is kind of like, no, Shinwell is not that person. Which to me, initially I was like, why are they sweating that so much? It's like, it's not like, it's like, kind of already knew Shinwell was a bad guy before. He was part of SBK before. He was a pretty high lieutenant and everything. I was like, so why is it such a big deal if he killed someone? And then I was like, oh, right, because you went into this not knowing that, because it's very different, because it's like he was locked up for 10 years. So I can only assume, I mean, they probably went over like earlier in the season, but I'm forgetting, but I guess it's only because of selling drugs and stuff like that. So he never actually killed anyone, at least that we know of. So I guess there's a difference between him being out, like being, be a drug dealer or something like that. Yeah, you were kind of a bad guy. Maybe he beat people up, but as long as he never killed anyone, that's a line that Sherlock won't cross, and he won't let anyone he associates with cross. So it eventually turns into a whole conversation of, do the ends justify the means? Which I know I say that a lot, but it kind of applies in this episode because they use those exact words. Because Sherlock tried to get Shinwell to confess, and it was meant to be a backup plan because he wanted Shinwell to confess himself. Because for Sherlock, it's also about the fact is that he covered up. He destroyed evidence for the sake of Shinwell. So it's like if Shinwell does any bad things going forward, any murders and stuff like that, he will be the one responsible for it. But then it comes out of the conversation, it's like for Joan, it's like no matter what the situation is, even if he did kill someone like 12 years ago, he went to jail and everything. He's a different person. He's trying to take down SBK now, and that's all that matters. It's like, even if he kills someone, he's the lesser two evil. Because I thought that was kind of interesting, because it's like Joan is willing to stick up for him. I guess because, is it just because of the whole like SBK thing, them being the greater of the evils, or is it because she legitimately cares about him and it doesn't want things to kind of backlash and turn against him like that? Is kind of one other way I'm interpreting it. Like, she worried about his, especially after all this time, if he's been putting forward trying to make things right. So I guess because she also brings up the whole comparison of like, the fact of the matter is like a surgeon could end up, as a doctor, you make a medical promise to not do no harm, but the fact of the matter is to go through chemotherapy, put someone through chemotherapy, you're technically pumping poison into somebody's body is kind of the way she was phrasing it. So it's kind of like, I don't know, because it's like at the end, like even if it's like for her, it's like it's one murder versus like all the countless murders, and some kind of Shin will kind of reiterates later on in the episode is that very point. Like SBK's killed like a crap ton of people, so. But I guess for Sherlock more so than anything is the fact that he cannot work with a murderer, which is kind of interesting. Is like, but that doesn't stop you from, on some level, still having feelings for Moriarty. I mean, sure, she's killed. No, we've definitely seen her kill people. So I don't know. I guess that could because there's an emotional investment there, so it's a bit of a gray area. I don't know. That was just kind of interesting to me that was kind of where the line was drawn. What threw me for a loop was later on when Shinwell kicked his ass, when he kicked Sherlock's ass, which he had earlier told Sherlock is like, no, I didn't do. Because I brought up previously, I was like, oh, maybe what we end up finding out is that Shinwell didn't do it, and I was kind of right about it. I was like, most likely it was kind of like an orders type of thing. It was Shinwell who was there because Jamel saw him. Because Jamel was kind of confused because he's like, oh, I don't see Shinwell here. Obviously, he went after the guy. He's running after the guy who did it. But the moment Shinwell, he looks at when he sees Shinwell just kind of strolling away. It turns out SBK had lied to him. Basically, there was trying to bring peace between SBK and another gang. Basically, there was a whole situation and they basically needed Jamel kind of removed from the equation, and they lied to Shinwell, made him think that person he thought was like a brother to him had betrayed him, so that's why. Cause I thought outright was someone else in SBK. I figured it was an SBK thing, like it wasn't like Shinwell outright killed him, because it's like, why kill someone like that, someone who was like your brother? Because he was literally talking about the fact that they were just laughing. I mean, Jamel's brother was kind of like they were literally just laughing and stuff before about something, but it's just like, it's like the flip on the dime of the hat like that. I knew there had to be a lot more to it, so I was like, obviously he didn't actually do it, but now it's like, actually he did, but to him it's more so the fact that he was tricked, and now it explains why. Obviously he's bringing up the fact is that he just wants to make up for his past and do something that his family could be proud of, and particularly his daughter. But the fact is, it turns out that this is all about revenge too, because he wants to get back at SBK for what they made him do. They made him kill the person he cares about, like the person that was like a brother to him, probably one of the few people in the world was ever close to. So that's what this has all been about. Which, like, for one, like I said, I thought it was kind of interesting that Shinwell kicked the crap out, just beat the crap out of Sherlock. It's because he knew what Sherlock was doing, because it's like, yo, you trained me. How could you not think I'll be able to see through that? He's like, so basically next time, I'm taking SBK down, and if anyone gets in my way, I feel bad for them. Now, it seemed like Sherlock was wanting to say something the entire time. What I'm thinking is, what if Sherlock probably found out afterwards about Shinwell's true motives and being like, oh, nope, I got it wrong. Or maybe it's a situation where it's like, hey, I don't want to admit I'm a wrong. Or, I wonder, is it a situation where Sherlock didn't realize he was wrong, or was it a situation where he did, or maybe it was all along, because Sherlock kind of keeps a lot of stuff to himself. So what if it was a trap from the beginning? What if he was like, maybe he said and did all this so that Shinwell would eventually, because he knew he was training Shinwell good enough to recognize it, and maybe he let off a good amount of signs to be like, hey, I'm doing this, catch me, because he's like, maybe he knew that was the only way he was going to get the truth from Shinwell, because Shinwell wouldn't say it otherwise. So I don't know, I kind of want to give Sherlock the benefit of the doubt and think that's what it was, because it did seem like he was trying to tell him something, but he was like, is that all? Like, it wasn't like apologetic, like, oh, I got this wrong. It seemed like he kind of might have already known, and he just didn't let on. So, because it does seem like, because he said like, oh, there's going to be like a reprise for a while we deal with this episode's case. So I was like, maybe that time he was trying to decide what he was going to do going forward. I mean, granted, maybe it was also about like, what was he going to do with Shinwell, because it's like, because for him, he also brings up the statement of like, Shinwell was never going to have his daughter. That the moment this is all said and done, he's going straight into witness protection. He probably will never see his little girl again. So it would be like all this for the sake of being with his little girl, which is like part of it's that, but I don't even think it's 100%. Like, I think it's probably like there's a small part of him who wants to do it for her, but mainly it's for his friend that he killed. You know what I mean? It was like a brother. So Very interesting turn of events. Like I said, I kind of felt that that might be the case, but it didn't click in my head to think like, oh, that's what this was all about too. So, um, because I mean, he never really explained why he was okay. Like he never said anything about when Jamel came after him. It's like he knew exactly who it was that came after him because he knew exactly that the gun was probably connected to that or something like that. But I mean, especially when the information came out, he didn't say anything, even though he knew it was most likely Jamel's brother that came after him. But like I said, I still think on some level he feels like, it's like, yo, I did kill your brother. So even if he's saying it's SBK that did it, he still is like, yo, I did it too. So I gotta live with that, suffer for that. And if his brother comes after me, fine. I just gotta make sure I take care of SBK before he takes me out, And I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely overthinking it, which is 100% a possibility. So. Very interesting episode, and I'm very interested to see where next episode picks up, especially after Shinwell kicks the crap out of Sherlock like that. I'm wondering what's he going to tell Watson? Is he going to tell her the truth? Because for one reason, he wants to keep someone like Shinwell away anyway. It's because if Shinwell is a murderer, he doesn't want him around Watson because that's like one of the people he cares about most. And, especially if he feels that Watson kind of has a soft spot when it comes to Shinwell, so she will be a little less willing to see the darker sides, which, obviously she heard Jamel's story and was kind of like convinced just like Sherlock was. Like I said, it seems like it's a situation where it's like they are both telling the truth, but there's just there's a little bit of a gray area when it comes to the story. But what this episode did show you too is also saw a bit of Shinwell's darker side. We had never really seen that previously, but we'd all brought it up before that Shinwell isn't necessarily a good guy, which is why I'm reiterating what I was saying earlier, like why I was like wondering why they had such a problem, because I was like, he is part of a gang. You would think it'd be kind of expected, but it's like, no, he was never tried for any murder, so maybe, I guess in their minds, maybe he never actually committed any. He most likely just stayed to, if he ever did, he probably beat someone up, which, I mean, even Sherlock's beaten someone up before. Sold drugs. Sherlock's done drugs. So, see what I'm trying to equate to. So, I don't know. We would just have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.